Yes, we're live.
I
Hi,
think.
everybody.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Divine Connections, a transcendental journey through the realms of spirituality and beyond. Tune in today with me, Lori Albert, and Theon Polino Filippelli for captivating discussions about the astral realms, reincarnation, energy healing, and so much more. Mediumship, all kinds of fun stuff. Theon is the founder of the spiritual community evolveme.com, which we would love for you to check out. And the Evolve Me platform offers one cohesive and nurturing space to connect all spiritual practitioners with those looking to explore their own spirituality. So that's what Evolve Me does, and that's what we are super excited about to share with you today. Tonight's guest, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, but this is like really exciting. This is really exciting. Okay, tonight's guest is Mark Robertson Lukes, and this is his bio. And I wish I had the creativity to create a bio like this, right?
I know.
Born on a blue day, Mark spent the first 19 years of his life living in 5 countries. He found and continues to find his home through the teachings of the Taoist master teacher Jeffrey Yuen. Also, a budding musician, which I can't wait to talk to you about this. Mark released his first solo album this year, Into the Wonder House, a call from the inside out for the world to stop pretending it knows everything. Oh my gosh, Mark, I can't wait to talk to you.
I know. Me too.
Thanks for
I
having
will
me.
tell. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry. I just cut you off, Mark. I just
Yeah.
wanted to say I absolutely love talking to Mark. He knows just about everything about everything. So I'm very happy to have him.
Yeah, well, I was raised in a family with a dad who pretended he knew everything. So I've got a little bit of that trick. I was going into school in 3rd grade and acting like I knew what was going on in the political sphere. You know, I was living in Washington, D.C. at that time, and I didn't know what I was talking about. So, you know,
Oh wow.
that's one of the main things that I try to remind myself is that there's a tendency to pretend that we know more than we know in our culture, and there's an uncomfortability with admitting that we don't know something because it seems like that has a sort of connotation of weakness in our culture, when really, you know, it should be just the opposite. So yeah, the Born on the Blue Day thing, by the way, that's based on a really a beautiful man named I think his name's Daniel Tammet, and he wrote a book called Born on a Blue Day, and he's I guess he would describe himself as he's autistic, and was raised in a family with 13 kids, and he was the eldest, so he was very heavily socialized, so he can interface really well with, you know, normative world, however we want to call it. I guess, you know, we all have to find our way there, and we don't have to, but here we are. So, you know, so he sees things, he sees numbers as colors, and he has a number, a specific color and shape form for every number from 1 to 10,000. And so when he's doing computations on you know, difficult mathematical computations everybody else needs a calculator for, he'll literally see a color landscape and be able to figure out by what the landscape looks like at the end what the answer is. And he described Tuesday as a blue day. He was born on Tuesday also, so it's blue day. So that it just yeah, it sounds a little pretentious, but it sounded poetic, so I liked it.
I absolutely love that, because I actually was one of my questions. What is a blue day?
Mhm.
I hope I was born on a green day, because that's my Green Day.
You like that band?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, man. But yeah, I definitely you said Tammet is his last name?
Yeah, Tammet. And yeah, it's a really interesting documentary about him. It's, I don't know if it's on YouTube, it was on Google for a while, and it's got a silly title. It's called something like The Boy with the Incredible Brain. And it's probably about 20 years old, but at the end of the documentary, he goes off and he goes off he's been told he's going to go to a country, and he doesn't know where he's going until he lands, and he has a week to become fluent enough in the language to be interviewed on national television. And he goes to Iceland, which has one of the most difficult languages, apparently in the world, and is able to pull it off. So he actually went into, I don't know if he's still doing this, but he makes language learning software.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Amazing.
I
Very
know.
beautiful, very beautiful heart. He's so open-hearted. So that's why it's enjoyable to watch. You see a lot of like really pissed off like postdocs and academics are like, why does he have this gift and we don't? He's just this beaming heart.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. But it's funny. I'm like Googling it right now. Are you doing the same thing, Lori?
Yeah, because the way you describe him, he reminds me of, to me, Krishna Das.
Mhm.
Just because Krishna Das just seems, well, Ram Dass and all of that line. I mean, it's all about love.
Mhm.
It's all about love, and
Yeah.
I just love that.
Well, that's where
Yeah.
the mind, in classical Chinese medicine, when someone is in their right mind, the mind is actually located in the heart, not the brain.
No.
The
Right.
brain is a very powerful processor, and it has its place too. But the mind we're supposed to really be moving from the heart, and that doesn't just mean emotionally. It means like that anything we learn intuitively, that anything we learn intellectually ought to have a charge emotionally, or we ought to be able to feel it. It's not just rote memorization. Learning is really about informing and transforming our hearts, I guess, opening our hearts and connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all know that the mind will tell us what we don't, what we want to hear. And the heart doesn't lie. And I
right.
always see it that way. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. The pericardium is a special organ in Chinese medicine. And it's, as you describe it, it has a special connection with the brain, because pericardium is like the blinders that horses have when they're like,
Yep.
walking in Central Park or wherever.
Yep.
Because the pericardium figures out what the heart is able to take in from the world, because the heart would be overwhelmed if it didn't have any sort of filtering
Filter.
mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you get into studying this? I mean, it's so, gosh, was there a sort of a, I mean, we all have our, I guess I should say, our story, kind of thing. But what do you see as the impetus that brought you to Taoism?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, it just kind of happened in a few ways. I'd been told a few times over the course of the previous about 6 or 7 years, why don't you try acupuncture, by 3 people just randomly in my life who I didn't even know that well. And then my identical twin brother, decided to go to naturopathic college. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try acupuncture. And I had just been to Thailand for a month, and I was studying Thai yoga massage and foot reflexology. And that was based on meridians, channel theory. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I wanted to, I told myself I would reassess every semester. I didn't want to feel like I was locked into it. So I actually did switch schools after the first semester. I was in a standard TCM school. And that was fine. I had one really good teacher there, but then I was living in New York City. I heard about a school that was based on the lineage of a Taoist master. And it was the first time his lineage had been made into a curriculum, or at least some of it. And that he was, the real deal. And so I switched over. And it was true. Yeah. I mean, I got to study classical Chinese medicine, which means you're studying with someone who's from an unbroken lineage. And that's kind of how I got there. And he's a Taoist priest, so
Yeah. And how did you get into, well, it sounds like you did a lot, during, even before this. So, it seems that also it's kind of in your blood, right? Your twin brother, is also, into that, sort of,
That's cool.
yeah, right. Like, no, but like, especially because, I believe you told me that your father was in the military, right?
Foreign
and then
service,
you moved.
but so he was an American diplomat. So similar. I moved around a lot.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. And so, I'm sure excuse me. I'm sure that took me.
Oh my goodness, she's gone.
Oh
Hello?
no, I just didn't want you to hear the barking.
Oh, there's
Okay. I'm like, stop, guys. Um,
she's
no,
cute.
but
It's fine.
I know. But yeah, they're excited because every time the door rings. But yeah, and so you know, your family obviously was very open. So how, like, tell me
Yeah, this
about
is
how your childhood was. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So yeah, my dad was most open-minded in our conversations about religion. My dad, before he joined the Foreign Service, he was an Episcopal priest. So it's kind of like a Catholic priest, but you can get married and have kids, and it's not centralized, and they don't have a pope. Um, you know, there's obviously very important historical differences, but as far as like, you know, my growing up years, my dad was not particularly open-minded when it came to discussing politics, and that's why I would go into the school with like a very dogmatic perspective on something and act like I knew what I was talking about. But when it came to, no, we weren't particularly religious, but for a while we were, you know, up until I was 10, I think I went to church just about every week. And my dad was always really open-minded and handled the questions I had for him, um, you know, with a lot of heart. And it was one way that I could really connect with my dad, because he was difficult to connect with, yeah, in you know, in other ways. So that was probably the beginning. So I got interested in words through him, you know, etymology. Um, and then I got interested in philosophy and religion, and I read a lot of books. I didn't understand what they meant, but I thought I was getting smarter. And then I let that go, and I ended up studying religion actually in college, but I wasn't studying to be a priest or anything. I chose it because it left me with the most room to study whatever I wanted to study. It was the most liberal artsy of the degrees that I could choose from.
Totally get that.
Yeah, in fact, my last semester I took entirely pass fail. I was so sick of the whole grade thing. So I just like I tried to make a point of actually not taking too many notes and just sitting and listening. And in Chinese medicine, there's this idea that if you focus on just listening, then your ears actually connect to your kidneys, which is a deeper energetic level than your eyes, which connect to your liver if you're like writing things down. So if you can just sit there and listen, then you can receive more of a transmission and maybe the more pertinent facts of framework in a much deeper way than if you're busy just scribbling down and then reviewing your notes later.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
like that is so amazing.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about the Chinese medicine. There, you know, I know, like, I'm one of those people that knows like this much. And it's a little bit dangerous, right? You know?
That's how most people are, including me, because there's so much to know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember studying it a little bit, and I remember that I being completely blown away by the idea that each organ in your body is associated with an emotion.
That's right.
And it makes so much sense. Like, because when you
Mhm.
think about like people that are, I don't know why I'm using this as an example, but somebody that's like an alcoholic might have a problem with rage
That's right.
because
Exactly.
anger goes with the liver, you
That's right.
know, and
Mhm.
and maybe I'm not sure I'm right about this. Sadness is the
Yeah.
kidneys. Is that right?
Sadness is the grief for the lungs.
The lungs. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So oftentimes if someone has a chronic lung condition and they've never been a smoker, it's probably because they're holding grief from their family system or from their own lives or both.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, okay, so this is like left field, but
Sure.
what do you think about like past lives? We were talking, Than and I were
I
talking
know.
about past lives earlier today.
Uh-huh.
So what do you
Yeah.
think about past lives coming in terms with this?
Yeah, well, you know, it's something that
Just a thought.
my teacher has gotten that question. You know, I wanted to revise my bio. I haven't done it yet, but I would just want to refer to him as my favorite teacher because it's not a math, you know, he's a master. I consider him my master teacher, but that gives sort of an innuendo that he's my master, and he's not. He doesn't have any apprentices. He's sort of like the end of his lineage. Um, and but anyway, people ask him that question, and he obviously acknowledges past lives, but he doesn't want people to focus on that because the Taoist perception is that we can get it all done in this life, and that looking at the past life is a distraction. Now, I would say that from my own perspective, it could be a really useful information, and I'm definitely fascinated and believe, at least intellectually, somewhere between intellectually and in my body. I very much believe in past lives and read about them for a while. And there's this idea, I think I may have described this at a recent last week in another meeting that I was in with Theon and you as well, Lori, that we choose, the Taoist idea is that we choose our incarnation. I know the Buddhists believe that some of us do, but maybe my teacher is just assuming that we are from the Taoist perspective, which, you know, there's no such thing as pure Taoism anymore, or pure Buddhism. My teacher's a Taoist priest, but Taoism in China has been infused with Buddhism and Confucianism, and, you know, for a very long time. Chen Buddhism actually comes out of Taoism, and then when Chen goes over to Japan, it's Zen Buddhism. So that's the Taoist form of Buddhism.
Oh, wow.
But so my teacher
Yeah.
is, you know, he comes from an oral tradition, an oral Taoist tradition. So I think it's pretty unwatered down, you know, going back to the woman who started the tradition, but that's an aside. So they basically believe that you choose your parents and for the shape, your morphology, but also for the challenges, for the gravity that the family system you're coming into, and you might be repeating a different role in the same family system. You're coming in more intentionally than not. Again, I don't know, you know, but but it feels right to me. It feels like I did choose my parents. And even if you don't believe in that spiritually, it's a very empowering perspective to begin from, because you can never say to your parents, well, you know, I didn't want to be born, or why did you have me? You have to be responsible
Right.
for your life, basically.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't
Yeah.
ask for help, but it takes the
Right.
victimhood out of it.
Yeah. And, you
That
know,
part
it's
of it, at
interesting.
least.
Yeah. And, but, you know, in a sense, you know, and you said that, you know, Buddhists, they don't necessarily believe that everybody chooses their life, but I think in a sense, kind of they may, like, let's say, you know, that, you know, you don't necessarily like consciously choose, well, I don't know what conscious would be in that way, but choose their life. But let's say on the adverse, they believe that some people are meant to repeat certain mistakes, but in a sense, you're kind of choosing that, because you're choosing sort of to relearn something, or to you know, go back and you know, for me, I've always I understand karma, but I also understand, you know, our soul's journey. So our soul has many, and this is my belief, and I'm not saying that this is, you know, what everybody believes, but, or should believe, but the way I've seen it is that, you know, we have, I call more than past lives, they're more like iterations to me. So there's other versions of me happening simultaneously. And I do feel that they do affect us in various ways. Like sometimes if I'm meditating, I will pull from other lifetimes, like a strength or something like that. Like I work with them a lot, you know, if you understand or believe in oversoul. You know, so your oversoul branches out into all of these iterations, and really what we're doing, we're experiencing, and within that experience, I you know, and I think what Lori and I were talking about earlier was, do they affect this life? And I think in a sense they can. And you know, it's almost like repeating patterns. So if, like, you know, in my past lives, I was you know, I had this thing, you know, I was always poor, or I was always like something, then maybe I would have some sort of issue with myself, you know, gaining money, or not thinking that I was I don't know, what is your thought on that?
So I had a couple ideas. There's this idea of the 9 heart mansions, or the 9 heart pains. And there's sort of 9 areas that, in order to be fully realized, that we need to be able to be proficient in. And they go in they don't have to go in a certain order, but, you know, for the sake of ease, I haven't done this for a while, but the first would be health, and the second would be wealth. So think of wealth as like externalized health. And we talk about Chinese medicine, if someone is blood deficient, they probably are struggling for money as well, because blood is like money in the bank as far as the body is concerned, as far as being fully conscious and full of chi and awareness and vitality. You need to not be blood deficient. So there are nine houses. I was just avoiding listing out the other seven. Health, wealth, prosperity. So prosperity means not only do I have wealth, but I can share it. And so a poor monk from the outside, from an outsider's perspective, a poor monk or a monk that doesn't have much money or could actually be wealthy and prosperous. That they have enough to be healthy, and they can give a little bit, then they're prosperous as well. The fourth would be travel. And I'm thinking I may be losing order. Knowledge, wisdom. Knowledge is associated with vocation, wisdom, and I know I forgot one. And relationships. Yeah. So relationships, emotional well-being, and the last is home. So that's really the last. Makes sense that home is the final one. Home is, do we feel at home in the world? Do we feel safe? I like to break it down into it's another Taoist idea. We talk about the human reality of being physical, emotional, and spiritual, right? We use that in the West as well. So do I feel safe physically?
Yeah.
That's the first thing we have to ask ourselves. Number two, do I feel safe emotionally? Can I express myself and who I am and not feel like that someone's going to drop the ball or I'm going to get attacked for it? And the third is, do I feel safe becoming more of who I am? And that's the most difficult one, and the most important one. I'd argue, and you can't get there until you feel safe physically and feel safe emotionally. And can I become more of who I am means, how do I figure out how to be even healthier physically? How do I learn to be an even better communicator or a better listener, and have more refined, or not refined in a fancy sort of way, but more open-hearted and direct conversations, and that that's basically it. Survival, communication, and then differentiation, which means the ability to make finer and finer choices about the first two and about who we are. And that's, again, am I safe to become more of who I am, where I am in this current time?
Absolutely. And I just got to say, Charity Ray put in health, wealth, prosperity, relationships, creativity, travel, vocation, wisdom, and home.
Yeah, cool. I think I got
Thanks, Charity.
Yeah.
She's the best.
Yeah,
And
Charity's my
if you want,
partner.
yeah.
Of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she definitely came through with that one.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
That is so
I love it.
cool. That
Yeah.
is-
Yeah.
So, again, my teacher just, my favorite teacher, he emphasizes that it's not where the focus should be. And he says something interesting about learning lessons. If we try to avoid something in this life, he says it's just going to come back around, and it's going to be even harder next time around.
Yep.
So that's,
You know what?
they
That
have a
is
kind of badass
so-
approach.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that, because
Mhm.
I know that there's something. I'm going to get a little probably TMI here, but there's like, my business has like plateaued. My spiritual business has
Mhm.
plateaued at like this place.
Mhm.
And there's a part of me that is thinking that it has to do with, or I don't know what it has to do with, right? So
Mhm.
I'm exploring right now past lives. Like, what is it within me that is not allowing my business to go past this certain level? Like,
Mhm.
I
Mm.
feel like it's inward. I feel like it's inward, and I've been really doing a lot of inner work to try to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah.
And so, based on the Taoist traditions, how would I sort of deal with that? How would
Work through
I?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a set of acupuncture. I'm gonna act like pretend I've got an answer for everything, but I don't really.
I love
Um,
it. Bring it on.
There's a particular lens of acupuncture you learn in classical Chinese medicine that's popularly known as the Eight Extraordinary Channels. It was
Okay.
a word that was translated from original Chinese by a British guy, and that's why I used the word extraordinary. And you could also use the word curious. And what it really means is the channels of great possibilities, which I really love. I just think it's a lot more beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's this idea that he basically says that, if you feel like the cup of possibilities has gotten filled up, this is definitely a different take on having the cup, half full or full.
Yeah.
If you feel like a cup is filled with all the possibilities and you've come to your limit of possibilities, then you basically have to make the cup bigger. And
Right.
that and so how do you go about doing that? And
I thought you were going to say you need to dump some out. I'm like, I don't want to dump
Yeah.
any.
I like all the possibilities, but yeah.
No, that's the
Sorry,
the
I didn't mean to
idea.
interrupt, but that's where my head went.
No, that's the idea, is to be able to not close off our minds, in any sort of way, or our hearts to the possibilities. It doesn't mean that can be overwhelming too. But what I was getting to was the eight extraordinary channels. I also call them the ancestral channels, because they're the classical Chinese medicine way of tapping into your DNA. And if there's some sort of imprint in your DNA, and I do believe that there are emotional and maybe even spiritual imprints, but definitely emotional imprints in our DNA that get passed on, and there might be a rift at some point if there's a trauma, a very profound trauma, that is pushed to the side, and that can become an unconscious story that takes hold on the people in the lineage, so that depression runs through the women in that lineage, or the men in that lineage, or a type of
Yes.
cancer runs through that lineage, or ADHD runs through that lineage. And that's where this dovetails with my other interest, which is systemic constellations, or originally known as family constellations, which is
Ooh,
working
yes,
with the
explain that.
energetics of our ancestors. And what's interesting about that what drew me to ancestral or family constellations, is this notion that our ancestors are a resource that we don't utilize. Very simply put, think about 3 dimensions. The first dimension would be our everyday awareness of problem-solving consciousness. It's the kind of consciousness that you want the person flying your airplane to be in, right? But it's not the end all be all only consciousness. So the
Right.
second kind of consciousness would be the ancestral plane, and the third would be spirit. So some of us are in touch with the spirit, with sort of this consciousness of spirit or experience of spirit, but very few of us are in touch with the second one, the ancestral consciousness. And what's unique and very important about the ancestral consciousness is that they lived not so long ago, even if it was 4 or 5 generations ago. And so they still have an invested interest in our material well-being, and not in any sort of materialistic, superficial way, but in a genuine, I want them to be able to live without suffering kind of way. And that resource is why I think part of the reason why ancestral dialogue, I mean, we call it worship from the outside, but when we see cultures like the Chinese have altars for their ancestors, they're in dialogue trying to make peace. And you can even look at it from a purely materialistic way and just say they're making peace with their inner consciousness about the relationship they had with their ancestors. But I think it's definitely a lot deeper than that.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
That's a bit of a ramble, but that's where I would start. I would start either with the eight extraordinary channels, because we know less about ourselves than we actually
Write that
know.
down.
I know,
Our
I'm doing that right now. I'm like, yeah.
What's in our unconscious is so much more vast than what we could ever know consciously. And
Yeah.
most of us would probably think, and I have the perception often, that my consciousness is like this, and my unconscious is, I've almost figured it all out. It's only this much I don't know about myself. But I think it's far vaster,
Yeah.
far more vaster.
Yeah.
Are we
I
going
knew
faster?
what you meant. Totally knew what you meant. So the 8 extraordinary channels,
You
is
can say it
that
with an English accent. Can you do a British accent? Extraordinary.
extraordinary?
Yeah, good.
Is that what it sounded like? Oh my God.
No.
And today anything could happen coming out
Right?
of our mouth, right? uh, the 8 extraordinary channels, is that Chinese medicine or is that acupuncture?
Well, so acupuncture.
Or is it all? I guess it
Yeah,
would be all.
acupuncture. That's acupuncture. It's a great question. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't think there are herbalists that work with the 8 extras, but you can I bet there. Well, I take it back. I'm sure you can access points. I do know that you can access points with essential oils. You don't need needles. So I could give you a protocol to tap into a certain level of your of your family system, or your, the eight extraordinary channels, and you wouldn't actually need to be needled.
Yeah.
And I could do a real run through of the eight. They're interesting, but I'll just, if you guys
Yeah.
want, I could do that at some point.
Ooh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
I'd
So
love
if
that.
I go to my acupuncturist and
Mhm.
said, I need to work on my 8 extraordinary channels, he would know
Yeah,
what I'm talking about? He should
he
know.
might,
You
so
should.
that in
He's
TCM,
Chinese. It's not like
okay,
he's
yeah. Well, the kind of Chinese medicine I got to study is almost non-existent in China, and it's non-exist. It's classical Chinese medicine practitioners, I'm guessing, make up less than 5% of all Chinese medicine practitioners in the
wow.
world.
Oh my God.
Wow.
If you went to Vietnam, that's the only place you'd find maybe a majority of classical Chinese medicine practitioners. Um, in France, that's also the primary form of Chinese medicine, I think.
And you're a practitioner of the classic. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
So someone who does TCM, which is a system that was created by Mao that has its merits, but it's a westernized, despiritualized version of classical Chinese medicine.
Okay.
Classical Chinese medicine, the spirit is primary. I mean, that was the character on the information booklet for my school, was the Chinese character for spirit,
Oh,
which is interesting in and of
Wow.
itself. It's two different characters next to each other. The first is the character for ancestry, and the second one is to stretch one's ancestry. So it's interesting that
Wow.
there's this physical connotation. I'm sure there are many levels to it that I don't understand, but this physical connotation of spirit and ancestry that go together right from the get-go.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I've now just started dipping my toes into it. And it's interesting because I'm half Filipino, half Italian. And my father is very Americanized. And when my parents got married, we mostly we knew my mother's family, the Italian side, and had really no relationship with his side. So I
Mhm,
really didn't know any other Filipinos besides my dad. So
mhm,
I kind of and the relationship we had with his family was not the best. So I had sort of that negative thought about that side of the family until I had a ancestral reading, and but the week before it, I in meditation, this older, like she looked Filipino lady
mhm,
came to me and was talking to me as a guide. And
mhm,
she said her name was Balin. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting name.
mhm.
And so I was getting this done, and I found out that Filipino shamans are called Balins.
Oh, beautiful.
And it
Mhm,
was like, yeah, and it was this really beautiful, I mean, what a strange word. I don't know any
mhm,
Tagalog or anything.
mhm,
And that, like, now that I'm starting to open myself up to that side, I feel a lot more connected to myself. I mean, I haven't really, that's really all the basics that I've done. I've not done too much with it. I'm slowly but surely trying to work it, but this family consult, I definitely agree that. And it was funny when Lori was saying, some of the things that I'm, that her feeling about where she is with her practice, it could very much well be with that ancestral, any ancestral traumas.
mhm.
It's about clean, and I know Mark and Charity do an amazing ancestral constellation workshop. So it's really just healing through that,
Mhm.
and seeing what comes up, because that has opened up a lot for me just in the little bit that I did in that one reading. So you can imagine as you explore what you're going to find, with
Right, where you
all of that.
you opened up a dialogue. You
Yeah.
consciously opened up a dialogue. It's like opening a door that hasn't been opened before. And I think we all have certain doors, in our consciousness, especially in our spiritual consciousness, that they don't completely disappear, but they can atrophy like a muscle if they're not used.
Right.
But when you have the intention, you can open up a door that hasn't been open for a while, and start to focus on photographs or think about a particular aspect of your lineage.
Yeah.
Most of us are a hodgepodge, so So
Yeah.
it reminds me, I want to kind of connect with some of my lineage that I haven't connected with for a while.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is, I've, I know quite a few practitioners that actually do healing with ancestral healing, and interestingly enough, I mean, I hear stories about, like, you always have that uncle that did something wrong to the family, or that
Mm,
that, like, the great grandfather that
mhm,
lied about his name, or blah blah blah.
mhm,
But it does it, right?
Yeah.
But it does have that ripple effect, just like
mhm,
anything else. We talked about this kind of in detail. We really don't know the effect that we have on this life or anybody else, until probably after we're not here anymore,
mhm,
because everything that we do is a butterfly effect.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so if you think about what that does to a family line, and how that really truly affects you, I mean, it could be
Mhm,
your ancestors from the Stone Age.
mhm. Yeah.
You really don't know the weight of what of the of what your family line is like, until you kind of open that up, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's really interesting about constellations that's pretty unique in all forms of healing that I've come across is that, say, an ancestor of yours was a victim in a terrible crime, the perpetrator actually then becomes part of your system. It's not like
Mm.
good versus evil. It's
Yeah.
really about trying to heal whatever was the background behind that perpetrator that caused them to do that thing to your ancestor, and then creating a healing movement that might go back 4 or 5 generations between, either person in your family was the perpetrator or vice versa. And there has to be a healing movement between those two, and stepping back a generation to find out how the perpetrator, not to find out the specific facts, but you know get a sense of why they were, what damaged them and caused them to get to the place where they did harm to someone else. And one of my mentors pointed out that if you go back far enough, we are all, for the most part, and this doesn't excuse any of the stuff that's going on in this country or in the world, doesn't, and it doesn't take away responsibility and the politics that very, I think, genuinely evolve in our race and gender, etc. But that most of us, and I'm still working with this in my head, most of us are, um, come from perpetrators. Because if you go back far enough, they were the ones who were the strong cavemen who were taking care of the small, tiny cavemen,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
probably. It doesn't mean there isn't some sort of redemption. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
people can't transform themselves, but it
Right.
does definitely takes away this idea of dehumanizing and taking the dignity away from someone. Even, I mean, it's easier said than done if someone suffered a terrible crime. But anyway, I'll stop there.
No, that makes so much sense. And but yeah, it's fascinating to think about, because yeah, you're right. And I'm sure we all have that within our family history. And okay, so what can somebody expect, as far as healing? So let's say, we've pinpointed a specific trauma,
Mm,
or instance within our family
mhm.
line that affects us. What is that healing like? What is the next generation experience with that?
Yeah, well, the cool thing about constellations, and it's true for the Eight Extraordinary channels too, um, that when the healing movement gets to a place where, let's just use an example of like a grandparent. Um, we could even use the example of a woman who had a baby out of wedlock, which, 60 or 70 years ago in our culture, you wouldn't have, if you were their parents, that daughter's parents who had a child out of wedlock, you wouldn't want to talk about it. And it's the sort of thing in other cultures around the world still, that would be basically, sometimes they'll hold a funeral for the daughter if she's had a baby out of wedlock
Oh
and she
yeah,
gets
or put
completely,
them in institutions. Yeah.
yeah, they get completely
Yeah.
disowned.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
can create a serious ripple effect down the line of unworthiness. And if the mother, if the baby is taken from the mother and put up for adoption, so basically when the healing movement, I don't know how good an example it is, but when the healing movement happens, um, if the ancestor is even alive, if it's not an ancestor, if it's a person in the that's still living in this plane, and maybe working with their higher self, they are they're acknowledging that they no longer want what has been their fate, that was what has kept them back, what has kept them from being able to get through that glass ceiling of success, or making enough money to do what they love to do. They basically say, my fate is mine and you no longer have to worry about me. And oftentimes what happens is that children try to become the parents of the parents, and that's a disruption in something called the orders of love. And so this could be as simple as a parent saying, you no longer need to be my parent, you're my child, I'm supposed to take care of you. And then the child will say, I'm grateful for that, it's been really difficult, and I'll never forget that you're my parent, you are always going to be my parent, living or past, and you will always have your place in the family system. And that's what causes a disturbance in their family system, is oftentimes is when someone's been a victim or a perpetrator, they've been tabooed out of the family memory, and all they want to be is to be seen that they still have a place in the family system. And once that happens, oftentimes that's enough to lift the depression off of multiple generations. And the idea is that when you're doing the work, you do it for yourself, because you're not trying to be a martyr. It has to be for yourself, first and foremost. But if you do healing through it, it'll ripple back to the land of the ancestors and help heal ancestors as well. And it goes backwards as well as forwards.
So are you
That's
saying
beautiful.
then that you could just sort of acknowledge whatever it is and release it, and then at least that release is a part of it? Or is there more work to be done on yourself in order to?
Well, there could be more work. I mean, I haven't really done a good job of describing the process. So constellations can be done one-on-one, or they could be done one-on-two, or two-on-two, working, Charity and I are working together with someone. But my favorite modality is working in groups. So, it's a form of group work. I wouldn't call it therapy, though it is therapeutic. And
Oh,
basically
I'm
start,
so in.
I
Yeah.
know. As
I
soon
am
as you
so
do that workshop again, I'm going.
okay.
well, do you
Yeah.
have a workshop on Evolve Me, don't you?
Yeah, I just put a new date for it, actually.
Oh, good.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yay. And
Yeah.
what's the date?
I'd have to look.
Oh, and hi,
But
Norma.
I'll check it out. I'll
Yeah.
check it out. But basically what you're doing is you're working with one person, and you're trying to, I might talk a little bit about some sort of part of our shared history. And oftentimes there's trauma that will come up through through slavery or the Holocaust, or
Sure.
some of the more, or the Holocaust against American Indian people,
Yeah.
the Holocaust against Jews.
Mhm.
It's helpful to start with something that's relatively charged, and then you might invite people in the group to share what comes up for them. And then depending on what someone shares, what the people share, if one is really particularly charged, they can serve as a portal for the rest of the group to get healing. So then you start to figure it out. You start to ask people to stand up in representation for the various members of their family living in past. And usually you'll choose one side, the mother or the father's. And you'll go back, and it's a very interesting experience. It's like channeling light. And I definitely don't consider to be myself a channel at all. But I have practiced Tai Chi and Qigong, and that's kind of where I work from, more of a tactile sense. But if you're in representation, you're in the middle of the room with the other people that are in representation. You might not even know who they're representing, and you might. And you just
Oh,
I start to, with my fingers, feel which way to turn, like turn towards this person. Do I want to be closer to this person, further away? It's very intuitive, but there's a certain charge that happens in the consciousness field when it starts to quicken, and people can get in touch with it. And you almost see it's not just an externalization. It's not just shadow play. It really is an energetic process where we're acknowledging and working with ancestral consciousness at the minimum, and also other spirit consciousness as well. Dan, what are you
So
going to
you
say?
are
Oh,
intuitive.
I was just going to say that. Oh yeah. Right. I know. I mean, it's funny that I'm not a channel, but you're
I'm
definitely
intuitive, but I don't consider myself to be a channel.
Yeah. Well, you
But
know,
but
it
that's what I'm
oh, go
saying.
ahead.
It's anyone. I think just about anyone could do this if they're open to it. It's definitely not play acting. You're not trying to get a bunch of information and do like you're not trying to do a role play. Um,
Right.
um, so it is a form of it is a form of channeling. I just don't see I don't think of myself as a channel.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody needs to go to evolveme.com and go check
Yes.
out because that's gonna be
And
awesome.
in her amazing fashion, of course, Charity Ray just put up the dates. So it's October
good.
24th from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. So October 24th, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And then I just wanted to also Laura Widman said hi, Mark, and hi, Norma.
Howdy. Oh yeah, I know Laura. It's
And I
not used to hearing Laura's last name, but I know Laura. Hi, Laura.
I have somebody on my chat that her name is KJ, and I
Mhm.
think she's kind of interested in this. She's really stuck around. She said this is very interesting. She's like, I have a few health issues that I would love
Mhm.
to know the root cause of. Boy,
Mhm.
don't we all? But
Mhm.
can this help with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
KJ, I
especially if
hope you're
you've
still
done,
here.
especially if you've
'Cause-
done if you've tried other things that are more in the material realm. Though there's really no medicine that isn't all three, mind, body, spirit. But yeah, no, absolutely. Getting healing for one's health can be a definitely can definitely
so
be
I'm
derived
like
from this
in
work.
for like multiple reasons.
I know, right? I was
Mhm.
just going to
It's
say,
just
because,
like,
we were
what
just
is
talking about autoimmune diseases
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of that can be triggered by stress and then where does stress come from and all of these things. So do you
Yeah.
think that for those people, and it seems like everybody is getting diagnosed with some sort of autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
So do you feel that that is part of the I guess something that we should be healing from ancestrally or
Yeah,
um,
autoimmunity runs in families. I have it in my
oh,
family. That's why I
yeah,
know.
me too.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's an ancestral thing. There's some sort of just, something that most people across the board who have autoimmune conditions have is they have a difficult time with sleep. And it's easy to, think about autoimmunity as when either the pathogen is so stealthy and or has become so embedded in the person's body in a certain system or organ. And so when the immune system is trying to get rid of it, it starts to swing so wildly that the punches come back and hit the person
Yeah.
themselves. That's a
Right.
good analogy, I think, for an autoimmune disease. So there's obviously some form of disturbance that's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that it usually has an echo going back for sure.
So
Yeah.
you know what's interesting about that is that one of the autoimmune diseases I have is Hashimoto's, and that's the
Uh-huh.
thyroid one, right?
Sure.
So my grandmother had her thyroid removed. My father had his thyroid removed. My
Mhm.
cousin has had thyroid issues. My cousin's child was born without a thyroid.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and
Like,
it's true.
how is that
Same.
even possible?
Think about how
Yeah.
that happened. So they all had thyroid issues, needed to get them taken out or whatever. And then this generation now is not born
Yeah.
with a thyroid at all. Do you think
Yeah.
that might have some ripple effect?
But
That's
how,
interesting.
Yeah.
here's the question, and this might sound weird, so just bear with me for a second, but like
Weird's good. Weird's fine.
weird's good. We
We
like
like
weird on
weird.
this
We
show.
like weird.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that, and tell me if there's if this makes sense, like DNA, right? So is it in my family's DNA, blah blah blah, to have something like this,
Well,
and then can it be and can, through the work you're talking about, can it be scooped away or can it be resolved?
yeah, I've got an answer for that.
Oh
Yes.
I'll pretend I have an answer for that. So there's this relatively new field in Western medicine called epigenetics.
Okay,
E-
writing that one down
epigenetics.
too.
And there's a
I
book I'd
know.
recommend. There's a book I'd recommend to just about anybody with a Western, who's been raised in the Western mind. It's called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And it's a really crossover. It explains basically the power of belief in what actually gets expressed genetically. So we are born with DNA but then how the DNA is expressed, whether a switch is flipped on or off for a particular autoimmune condition, that's an epigenetic factor. And epigenetics are specifically responding to our physical environment. So, if someone is in a particularly stressful environment, then that could flip the epigenetic switch that then makes that tendency in the DNA, which has been latent and might be latent for the entire life of that person. It then starts to manifest. And so the role of the 8 extraordinary channels is to help flip the switch back off. And so that tendency becomes latent again. It's not like you're trying to remove something and act like it's evil. And then again, at the same time, taking away the good evil thing, away from it, there's a reason why it expressed, it's all darn, I got an autoimmune disease, but what is it telling me about my life? What is it telling me about how my culture that I'm living in, or the environment I'm living in? Am I living too close to a nuclear plant? Have I been in this relationship that's toxic and I just figure I'm going to ride it out because I've got young kids, these things that we choose to tolerate.
Yeah.
And it comes to physical, chemical, environmental, genetic predispositions. There's a 4, and missing a 5th one, emotional. And these 5 factors, are all different stressors. And if one of them is way out of whack, or we just can't handle it because there's too much, they're all piling on, or there's too much of one, that's when the body starts to go haywire. And there's a reason for it, because the body is raising all sorts of red flags and saying, pay attention, because, pay attention because your spirit is not happy.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, that's been a long time theory of mine, because I have many generations of autoimmune, cousins, sisters, mother, grandmother, great grandmother. So, and it's funny, I just described all the women in my family, and and it's funny because the men in my family, well, actually, a few of the women don't have it, but they have different, they're not as I like to think, OCD as the rest of us. And so, I definitely had a long time theory that if there was a way to sort of, we're all genetically predisposed, the words I'm trying to say, but we're all genetically, we're able to have this autoimmune, but it doesn't necessarily come out to everybody in our family.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but it makes sense that these certain triggers, and so would trying to heal that, it would be just to find these triggers and how we need to individually, because it could very well be multiple things, right?
Yeah. The strategy in Chinese medicine is to basically get the body's ability to lock something down and to make it latent. If someone comes to me with an autoimmune condition and they're not eating well, and they're not taking good care of themselves, I'm going to use the deepest layer of their energetics, which means their essence, the thickest, densest substance in the body, and I'm going to basically help to lock down whatever that is into the freezers or the storage facilities of the body. And those would be the knees and the hips. And that's why knee and hip, replacement surgery is endemic in our country. Because after a while of holding stuff in and trying to deal with more and more stress and pressure, after a while, or if we're under even more stress, then those freezers can no longer hold on to whatever they're holding on to, and they start to come out. But I'm going into too much detail. Basically, I try to suppress what's going on first if the person isn't well enough to fully release it. And then what I'll do is, if I can put it into latency, so there's no autoimmune flare, there's no presentation of autoimmunity in any of their tests, antibody tests, then we work on the diet and the right kind of exercise, attitude, relationships. They basically have to make themselves well.
Yeah.
And then when you're well, then you can go back and release what's been held in and clear out what was causing the autoimmunity in the first place.
And do you hear
Ooh.
that, Norma? Yeah, I talk about this a lot, that's amazing. I was just talking to my sister about this, I definitely want to give her your information there, Mark,
Okay.
because
Come to
I
the
think,
the workshop. Oh my God, I'm so in for that
oh
because it's
yeah,
only
me
like
too.
$30. It's like so reasonable.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry,
coming.
didn't mean to
Yeah, Lori and I are
interrupt.
coming. Um, no, I find that so fascinating, and and it's funny. I think Mark, you and I talked about this and laughed about it. Is that they talk about modern medicine versus what do they call it? Alternative medicine. Even
Yeah.
though what you're studying were like thousands of years
Right.
older than our current medicine.
Yeah. And modern medicine is, I mean, what modern medicine was in the 1920s is different from what it is now.
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
every medicine has its place. So, what's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, what we want to call like, um, if you call something ancient, then all of a sudden it sounds like it's here's a good little vignette actually
It's
from my childhood.
antiquated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And think about animal and plants and plant medicine. Well, to a modern ear, something that was made by a machine with precision and that comes in a package that says medicine on it. A lot of us are gonna take that to be more medicinal than something that's just a bunch of plants being mixed together, because of
Right.
our knowledge base and how we're indoctrinated. And we're all indoctrinated. That's just a given of learning how to live in our culture, is that we have to learn the social cues, and we have to learn basically how to survive at a very profound level in the first 7 or 8 years of our life. And it's something that Bruce Lipton talks about in that book, but the biology of belief, that we're predominantly in a theta wave mind state, which means we're in the same mind state that someone is if they're being hypnotized, because there's just so much to learn.
Yeah.
Again, for our social survival, our physical survival, and even our spiritual survival. And I was going to touch on another point there, but I got lost talking.
How do I know the name Bruce Lipton? What else has he done?
That's
I
the most well-known one that I know.
Yeah.
It sounds like a golfer's name, doesn't it?
um
Like, think of
I
Lipton
just
Tea and Bruce.
I feel like that I've either read something that he's done. I don't think it was Biology of the Leaf
I would
because I feel
I
like
would
I would
be
remember that maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
be surprised if he had done more than one. And that's probably, oh yeah, I was gonna tell a quick little story. It's a cute story. I'm the villain in it.
oh
Um,
no.
my twin brother and I were 4 years old, just about a couple months shy of 5, and we're about to move to our third country in our short lives, at that point. And so we were going to be flying over from Washington D.C. to Paris on Halloween night, and I guess we were barely conscious of what Halloween was, and we didn't know anything about the Wizard of Oz. But my mom arbitrarily gave my twin brother the Tin Man, and I got the lion. I was immediately bummed, and
Whoa.
I thought to myself,
Why?
well, because
Oh, because you
we
wanted to be like a robot.
a
Yeah.
machine,
A
yeah.
machine. Yeah.
Our mom had been taking us to the Air and Space Museum, and I already knew what rockets were, and I was obsessed with you know, technology, like a lot of boys and girls too in our culture are.
Yeah.
And so I was I was a very obedient kid and pretty sweet, but I literally right in front of my mom, I can still see her. She's standing next to John, and I said something, but it wasn't mean. But then I realized it's gonna have to just deal with it. But then this rage overcame me, and I went over. I literally grabbed the Tin Man mask from my twin brother. I did it in a way where he didn't know I was coming for it, else he would have hit it. And I took it and I just crumpled it up. And he started to cry, and I started to cry because we're so hard connected. And my mom was
Aw.
pissed.
How do you remember that?
Oh my
Like-
That's like
gosh.
you were
Well, that I must
4.
have been traumatic to him
Yeah,
and his
right.
brother.
You
Yeah.
remember a lot if you're moving around. If you move
Yeah.
around every 4 years, or in that case, there was the third time I moved, in 4 years. There's something about moving. Again, I think it's something to do with evolution in terms of our ability to survive. We really pay attention to our environment. And if you're coming into a new environment, you remember everything else that goes along with it. Or if you're about to leave an environment, you remember a lot of the details.
Yeah.
And they become these moving dates become almost like reference points that
Yeah.
that by association you attach other memories to.
Yeah.
My mom did get me. I just pleaded right away. Mom, can you give him another Tin Man? I'm okay with
Aw.
this. And
That
she
doesn't make you a villain, but
she gave me a day to like to feel it deeply, and I did. And then she all of a sudden John had a new one, and it was all good.
oh, I love that.
And he's
Well,
your
I mean,
identical twin?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's so cool.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you guys are both of you, you're both in the field, and it's interesting. Do you often do things together, or?
Well, he doesn't really practice medicine. He has his naturopathic license, and he doesn't have an acupuncture license. No, maybe he does. But he basically has a wellness business um, of of intravenous medicine. He's got a company called Boost IV, which
Oh,
basically
yeah.
it does anything from people wanting boost of vitamins and cocktails of different vitamins and minerals. I really actually don't know a lot about it. I mean, and he'll treat anyone from people that have cancer to folks who just are feeling run down
Yeah.
or getting
Yeah.
ready for some big event, some athletic event or something. So he decided to go that route and to be an entrepreneur. So that's what he's doing, and it's going pretty well. So,
Awesome.
I would love at some point to be able to collaborate again in some way, um, in a more immediate way. And I guess we do in the sense that I consider the two of us to be the most open-minded people politically in our family. So it's nice to have someone else who's close to me, to have someone I can talk to about, about stuff that's going on in the world, because it's so polarized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
absolutely.
gosh. Yeah.
So
Uh,
how did the music thing come into play? I mean, I know we're almost out of time and stuff, but I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I know so much
I know.
about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori's a musician herself.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a massive crush on this Irish girl when I was in ninth grade, and that was the year the Joshua Tree came out. And
Oh,
I made a very blunt transition from Van Halen to U2 in 1988,
Cool. Who didn't?
1987.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first 10 times I really wanted to like this album because I really like this girl. So I listened to it 10 times in a row. I remember sitting on the floor with my back to my bed with my Walkman, like, fuzzy headphones on. And after about the sixth or seventh listen, I was like, wow. First Bono's voice scared me because it was so vulnerable. It was so wide
Yeah.
open. There
Yeah.
was nothing slick about it at all. And then I
Right.
was just like, by the 10th listen, I was absolutely in love with the music and with open-heartedness. They really, I was very fortunate to be at that age because they became my primary role model of what good man could be. And I think they were an excellent role models at that point in time in my life.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems,
I loved you too.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I
So I
actually have
started
a
playing.
terrible story where I was standing right next to him and I didn't know it was him.
Oh yeah, Bono.
Yes, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah, where?
it's a stupid long story, but
Okay.
we were at this hotel. We were actually picking up tickets for the YouTube show.
Yeah.
I live in Los Angeles, right? So we
Yeah,
were at
right.
this hotel picking it up, and we left. We picked up the tickets and we left, and we were waiting for our valet, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're waiting there, and I'm talking to the guy, talking to the valet man or the doorman or whatever, and I said, "So, do you ever? I'm sure you see like a lot of celebrities. How do you react?" And he goes, "Sometimes they're standing right next to you, and you don't even know it." And I didn't realize until later, because there was this guy standing over there, but he
Yeah.
didn't have the normal Bono glasses. He had like the Fly, because it was the Fly tour.
Oh, yeah,
So he
Yeah.
had the big
yeah.
glasses on.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I didn't know. And then that night when we were watching the show, we had our binoculars, and I went to my friend. I went, "Oh my God, Nadine, look at this."
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, that was the guy that was standing there.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a great show.
But anyway, so I'm sorry, I
yeah.
didn't mean to take up so
No,
much
it's all
time on that.
good.
But so
No.
how did you? So that started your musical journey.
Yeah, that's when I started. Then I moved to Australia the next year, and I decided that, my heart was in basketball. I wanted to play college basketball, and I was the point guard of my high school in in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which is a very small school. So, there wasn't a lot to pull from, but my teacher was an ex-professional European player. He's American who
Wow.
played in the European leagues. And he said he would have been a bench warmer in the NBA and he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be a starter. So I just was very serious about basketball for about 3 years. And then when I had to leave because my dad was posted, to Australia from Malaysia, I was in 10th grade going into 11th, broke my
Oh,
heart. I wanted to be able to put myself into something that I could take with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I
right.
can take a guitar with me.
There
So
you
that's
go.
when I transitioned completely from being, uber athletic to being musical. I still walked around and was into, sports, but I was focused on music then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
That
Mhm.
is really awesome. And that must have been, well, a very interesting life. All you really knew from was, the moving to all these, well, I'm sure beautiful places too.
Mhm. Yeah.
You get that, that experience of different cultures. But I'm sure, as when you said you were going in 10th grade going into 11th, that's probably one of the most critical times where you've built your friend base. And so that
Mhm.
must have
Oh, it
been,
was hard.
uh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
And well, thankfully you have a twin brother.
exactly.
I
That
would
helps a
say that.
lot.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely does. And
Mhm.
you can feel each other's pain through that, and also
Mhm.
still have a buddy with you at all times. So
Mhm.
but do you feel that an experience like that will have, any sort of ancestral like repercussions, I guess? And I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. So it's really about your perspective. So
Yeah, I think I don't know a lot about astrology, although I do believe in it. I think my chart is a lot of fire, and I think I was constitutionally set up to like to travel. I traveled even more as an adult after I finished college than I did as growing up
I
with my
love it.
parents. So yeah, I was set up. I was set up for it, I think. It doesn't mean it wasn't difficult, but by the time I got through and came back here to go to college, I felt like I had really graduated from something very special that made me who I was, who I
Yeah.
am. Um, and so I feel very fortunate in that
So this
respect.
sounds like
I
a
agree.
line, and I don't mean it to, but what is your sign?
Oh yeah.
I hate asking
I,
people.
well, I'm a sun and a rising Sagittarius, and my moon is in Leo, so that's all fire there. And I
Mm.
think
Wow.
77% of my planets are all in my first house.
Wow. I know nothing of what you just said.
Just a
Uh,
lot of fire, a lot of fire.
I knew
oh,
the fire
yeah.
part. That's all I knew too.
Yeah, I'm still kind of learning. Somebody said that to me. I don't know what houses I have, but I do know that I'm a Virgo,
Uh-huh.
Virgo
Yeah.
Libra. Yeah, that's it. The
Uh-huh.
end.
Charity is
Um,
too.
The end.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh my
It's the
gosh, I
exact same
remember.
combination.
Really?
Who was
She's
that?
When is
her sun sign is Libra and her rising sign is Virgo. So you guys might get this.
really?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So she's on the cusp in September.
Well, so rising and sun are two different things. Sun is
Oh,
basically you're asking the
I'm
wrong
like,
person. Right. I think rising is who you
Charity, where are you? Right in the
sun.
chat.
Rising is who you present as to the world, and sun is sort of more like your constitutional sign, I think. So I think rising in some ways is more important than sun sign. But yeah, anybody who's listening might want to type into the chat. I'm not sure if I
Yeah.
got that right.
So when is your birthday, San?
Oh, September 21st.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Oh,
God.
happy birthday.
Thank
Happy
you.
Yeah.
birthday.
Very
I did
cuspy.
not know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, very casual. What? What?
I didn't
I'm
know. Happy birthday.
Oh, that's okay. I'm 29.
Wow.
I've been 29 for 20 years,
too.
but it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
nice.
fine.
Nice. So was it your birthday when we were on that call 2 days ago then? No, that's been fun. I'm just
Oh
looking at
yeah,
the date,
it
today's
was
the
a
25th.
oh yeah, it was the day before. Yeah. I don't
Uh-huh.
like to tell people usually. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You are
Just
like the song, the Earth, Wind, and Fire song.
yeah, right. Does that mean that my
Believe
house
in
is
the
in
fire.
there? Oh yeah.
What's that?
Isn't that funny? So I have two other sisters that are also in September, and so they both
Wow,
sent me that song, and I was like, oh, we're each 6 days apart from each other. It's really
that's cool.
strange. Yeah, and but so they kept showing me the song. I was like, oh, I love that song. And I go, they go, but it's your song, and I go, why? And they go, because it's 21st of September, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I didn't
21st
even
night of September. Yeah, that's the
September.
lyric. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, is
Yeah,
it?
that
I
is
didn't
so
know that.
crazy. Yeah,
It's
neither
so
did
funny.
I. And it's like the first sentence that he says
Uh-huh.
too, and I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so it's good. And I at least I can say that I was that I was born on the International Day of Peace.
That's
Oh,
cool. That's
Yeah,
auspicious.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
oh,
That's all.
that's
Yeah,
nice.
that actually makes me like my birthday. I never liked it,
I was
but
born on Pearl Harbor Day. How about that? In
Ooh.
fact, I was born on Pearl Harbor Day in Singapore, which was bombed simultaneously at the same time as Pearl Harbor.
I did not know
And
that.
I was born in 71. Pearl Harbor happened in 41. I was born 30 years like to the minute of
Oh
that
my
of
God.
that of that invasion.
oh my
Wow.
gosh. So I
Yeah.
wonder what that says.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
It's interesting, but it's something I thought about. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
it could mean something, it could mean nothing. I share a birthday with Tom Waits and Britney Spears too, I think.
Well, there you go.
That's amazing. Well, I said to my son today, I share a birthday with Bruce Lee, and I've always loved Bruce Lee.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I studied his martial arts once for a little
did you?
while. One of them, yeah.
So cool.
Bruce Lee's form was a combination of Jukindo. I don't remember how to say it, but it's a combination of two martial arts, and one of them is Wing Chun, and that's a martial art that was started by a woman. It's the only one I know of that was started by a woman, and
Wow.
she was a nun, and it's all the close contact fighting stuff that Bruce Lee is doing is from Wing Chun. All the big grand
Oh,
kicks and jumps and leaps
Yeah.
is from a northern style, probably Tiger or Claw or
oh.
something like that.
Yeah. Tiger style. I don't know. I
Mhm.
just remember that from a Wu-Tang song.
Nice. There you go. Getting your education on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It tells you how old I am.
Uh-huh.
Also, I just wanted to say, Norma said that yes, she did, because I said talking about the autoimmune. A doctor told me that sometimes triggers. Oh, maybe I'm not seeing the full message. Sometimes cancer triggers autoimmune diseases. Treat the cancer, the autoimmune disease disappears. Who knows?
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what
wow.
she says.
Mhm. Mhm.
Very, very
That's
interesting.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think that especially for those of us that suffer from autoimmune diseases, it's definitely worth a shot. I talk about taking biologics and things like that, and I'm sure it definitely helps. But this can definitely be something that you can look into. With these ancestral constellations that Charity and Mark do. And again, I want to say it's October 24th
Yeah.
at 2 p.m.
Yeah. Eastern
Eastern.
Standard. Mhm.
Yeah, and definitely check it out. It's on the Evolve Me site, and we want I know
There's
Lori and I
also
are going to
one
come.
on the
Cool.
29th as well. You have one listed for the 29th as
Yeah, I've
well.
got to change. I didn't realize I put two in and that there's one fee for both of them. So I've got to take out the second one and say there's going to be another one in 4 days.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to fix that up. But yeah,
Okay.
anyway, it's
I'm
all good. If
hoping I
someone
can
signs
make
up,
the Tuesday one then, because yeah, Tuesday's kind of a difficult day, but I'm gonna do
so
everything I can to.
we might do the 29th as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you let me know and I will mark
Okay.
that on my calendar.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I mean that's like I'm interested in anything. I shouldn't say anything new, but like new to me.
Mhm. Sure.
This is a an ancient way of treating
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah,
kind of.
that's
And
right.
Yes.
I'm so enthralled by that idea, so I'm really excited about it, and can't wait. So
It's also
everybody go to evolveme.com, check out Mark's page, and look at the web, I'm sorry, the workshop that he has coming up. But then also you have You do other stuff too on there, right? Do you have other stuff listed on Involve Me?
There was something I was going to do a while back, and it was being more of an introduction to Taoist medicine,
Oh,
sort of
cool.
what I was talking
Mm.
about before. But I was just going to say, regarding the constellations, I wanted to demystify it as much as possible. That it's very universal, and it's just something that we just don't learn in school and are exposed to. But it's just like, basically learning how to play in a sandbox. It's anybody can do it. That's all I wanted to say. If y'all
Absolutely.
still play in a sandbox,
I do
Yeah,
actually.
do. Cool.
No, but I do. But I, whenever I go out in the desert, I do actually. But I have tried, and I've done some your workshop. When you did it for us in the group or in the
Mhm.
community, and you and Charity just are amazing together. And I took so much out of it, and I just, to everybody out there, I if you're interested in something like that, and maybe trying to learn more about how your ancestry affects your current life, and ways that you can sort of heal through that, definitely check out this workshop, because it's funny, it's like it almost feels like everybody in the community kind of especially the ones that haven't done it before, we all seem to go with the same, like we're on the same theme, like, oh, I really want to check out my hands, right?
Yeah.
And we had just been talking about this, and this is such a great segue, and obviously a divine sign
Yeah.
for us, and to look deeper, and for anybody, even if you don't have an autoimmune disease, this is not, this is for everything. This is
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
triggers in your life, for things that hold us back, and if you can't figure out where it's coming from, then it must, it may be in your ancestral line. So
That's right. It's really good for
yeah.
estranged relationships as well, like
Yes.
between parents and children. Sometimes you wish that you could change someone's perception, or help them open their eyes to the world, a parent or a child or someone that you're very close to. But the only way you can ever change them is really in yourself, by working with letting go and accepting who they are, and working in some sort of process that moves dynamically, the pieces inside of yourself. And when you can effectively heal the family system from within, then all of a sudden it can reconnect estranged people.
Wow.
I love that.
Amazing. This was
Yeah.
so much fun today. Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
cool.
Mark.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate
Thank you
Thank
to you
you.
both. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had fun too.
Me too.
Wow.
And I always love talking to you. You're always a wealth of knowledge. I always say that. He just is, you ask him anything, and he
I'll
can
pretend
tell
I know.
you.
I'll pretend I have an answer. Yeah.
He says that, but then he comes up with these profound answers. But okay.
Yes.
Well, I would say Theon is a wonderful champion. So I think, Theon, you bring out the best in people.
Yeah.
So I
Aw,
appreciate
thank
that
you.
gift. And Lori, it's been really good to meet you as well.
Yes, it was nice meeting you. I
Thanks,
cannot,
thanks
I
for
mean, I
hosting the
really
show.
truly can't wait for the workshop. I'm like
I
very
know.
excited about that.
Me too. We're going to sign up. Yeah, you tell us the date, and you said
Okay.
you're going to do it on the 24th
24th,
on at
Tuesday.
2 p.m. Yeah, Tuesday at 2 p.m. and
Mhm.
Eastern, and then you're
Mhm.
probably going to do another one on the 24th or 29th,
29th. Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go fix it right
Yay.
now.
All right. Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then we'll,
awesome.
so go tomorrow and sign up on the Evolve Me site for Mark and Charity's ancestral constellation workshop.
Awesome.
Yay.
So thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
We appreciate
Thanks to
you
you
being
both.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
too.
to everybody for showing up.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks for
everyone.
listening. Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
great night,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.